Cadet Ralek was the only one in his company behaving himself before the lecture. He came from a military family. Growing up, he was steeped in discipline and tradition. But that wasn't his only reason for attentiveness. This week's modules were focused on counterinsurgency, and today's lecture on the greatest insurgency of all. On that, Ralek's uncle had been on the losing side of nearly 200 years before, the Terran insurgency. "Hold fast," an NCO called at the front of the lecture theatre. The hall, full of chattering cadets, fell silent as they braced their upper limbs on their desks, while some officers went through their rituals, transferring command of the cadets over to the officer, who introduced himself. "I am Second Lieutenant Orion of the Federation Marine Corps. As part of today's module, we have a very special presenter, Corporal Felix of the Terran here." The class perked up at that. Terrans no longer had an army of their own. They hadn't had one for 174 years, the exact date that every race had been accepted into the Galactic Federation had been drilled into each and every one of them. They watched as an old, frail man was wheeled into the lecture theatre, ashy, paper-thin skin hanging from his face, civilian clothes in the Terran style with several medals pinned on the left of his chest. 01 Orion bowed politely, and they whispered to each other. Then he pinned a microphone to Felix's lapel. He began to speak with the thin, frail voice of a man nearing the end of his twilight years. "Good evening, cadets. I'm getting straight to the point because there's just one thing the armed forces of the Federation want you to learn from me, and because I want to deliver it to you before I drop dead." The old man struggled to get enough air between his words. The class laughed nervously. The old man gathered his strength, eyes closed, breathing slowly. "We Terrans had inferior numbers and technology, and we were fighting a war of extermination, but we still beat the Empire. How did we do it? You." Felix pointed at a cadet in the fourth row with a bony, wavering finger, a Kelres who looked like a 4-foot red panda. "Sir, because humans are physically tough and aggressive apex predators, sir." Only the GT who were in the theatre laughed at that. Only some of them, and only a little. "Don't fucking swear at me, cadet. I'm a corporal and I'm retired." The whole class giggled that time. You think that's funny? What do you think?" he said, as his frail finger pointed at one of the closer GT, a hulking reptoid in the second row. "Because humans are sly, intelligent, and patient, Mr. Phoenix. Your kind came up with tactics we simply couldn't counter, over timeframes we didn't anticipate." "You could, and you did, cadet. The Empire was fighting a war of extermination. They blocked out our sun, and it only took us 3 years. The class had no answers to that. Felix pointed at another of the assay in the room. Have you got answers for me?" "I agree with the other cadets, mister, but I would like to add, humans are willing to do anything to survive, Mr. Felix," the assay replied. A better answer. Maybe I should ask someone who knows." The old man pointed at one of the Terran cadets scattered throughout the lecture theatre. "You, young lady, what do you think?" "Mr. Felix," she began, "in guerrilla warfare and insurgency operations, all you need to win is to not lose. Classic Fabian tactics that go as far back as the Punic Wars. Classic Maoist tactics of the 20th century. Deny the enemy resources and deny them battle unless it's at a time and place of your choosing. As long as someone survives, you haven't lost, Mr. Felix." The old retired corporal seemed to relax somewhat. He paused for a long while. His threat of dropping dead seemed like less of a joke by the minute. "Straight from the PAM. Good drills, cadet," he finally said before pausing again. "I was barely 19 when the Empire invaded. I was fresh out of basic training when the sun shield went up. I was lucky. I was evacuated by ARC ship less than a year later. By then we had been on less than starvation rations for months. The class exchanged looks. They were all thinking of the human reputation. What do we taste like? Cadet Ralek couldn't help but ask. Private Felix's selection was running personal radios and line-of-sight communicators, but for now they were doing it old school. Hand signals. They were patrolling their sunless planet towards the location where the latest enemy incursion had been reported. As pointman, he was the first to see the glow of the enemy in the distance. Take cover. Enemy contact front. Enemy squad 820 meters north-northeast. Come here. His squad slowly lowered themselves to cover, and his squad leader made his way over to him. What do you see? One of those wired slow walkers, being protected by a team of hunter-killers. I count 9. They're using spotlights and floodlights. They may not have optics. They might have a team on Overwatch that does. What do you think they're doing? Science or harvesting or drawing attention? His section commander paused for a moment. This kind of walker goes back to their smaller bases with a load, drops it off, then leaves again. Stay here on Overwatch, radio silence, wait out for further instructions. His squad leader flashed hand signals and left 2 of his squad mates with him, while they watched and waited. Around half an hour later, they had their orders. Recon, then kill them all, destroy the walker, booby-trap the bodies, hide and observe, develop the situation. His section commander flashed the hand signals for their orders. The squad took their positions across the walker, and they awaited the signal. A purple beam silently lanced from the squad commander's modular infantry laser rifle. The beam both squealed and thudded as it burst through one of the hunter-killer robot's bodies. The robot had barely begun to fall when each of the squad members' rifle also lanced a robot body with their own beams. The robot corpses clattered and rattled lifelessly to the ground. The squad's aim then played across the legs of the walker, where they attached to his thorax. It dropped to the ground with a prolonged thud, and then silence aside from the hydraulics within the walker trying in vain to move his legs. The squad took an all-round defensive position around the area while the squad commander finished off the walker, his rifle punching a hole through the side for him to throw a plasma grenade into. That done, they placed trip bombs under the HK bodies, accounted for everyone, then moved off to their predetermined form-up point less than half a kilometre away. The whine of dropship's engines steadily increased in volume over their whispers. The HK's team's backup had arrived in the form of another 16 HKs, one of the 9-foot-tall crocs and a 12-foot-tall mech suit. The croc and the mech suit was a lot of firepower. The squad quietly deployed from their form-up point, crawling low and slow for the withered scrub towards the site of their previous victory. It had become easy to move quietly in the sunless dirt, with the plants long dead. Their matte adaptive camouflage absorbed a variable amount of light from the EM spectrum, from low-energy IR to high-energy UV. On their sunless planet, they were basically invisible. A sharp crack filled the darkness, and the croc dropped to the ground, briefly flailing in the dirt. Honorless, shameless Bruce thugs have trapped bodies. Leave bodies be, take positions, bring leaders. The HK team had positioned itself in a perimeter around the fallen walker. The mech suit stood lifelessly by it, and a pair of the 3-foot slugs were sliding towards the wreckage. One began to cut into the side of the walker with a plasma torch, while the other examined the legs that had been sheared off by laser beams. Not even the robots attended to the croc, which seemed to have bled out. Felix looked to his squadmates and commanded for orders. Squad, rifles target HKs on my signal. Fire at will. Squad, heavy weapons target mech on my signal. 3 high-impact rounds. Extended file, 10-meter spacing. Felix took his position in the formation, and they began to close in on the invaders. The squad commander's beam lanced out across the battlefield, squashing a hole through a robot body, and the squad unleashed a controlled burst of hellfire. In less than 4 seconds, the hunter-killer team had been annihilated. 4 seconds after that, the mech suit had been shorn in half at the waist by repeated high-impact lasers. The squad closed in on their hapless victims. Felix, ballistic rounds on the slugs, fire at will. Heavy weapons, pull that mech, kill the pilot. Alpha, suppress, Bravo, security. The squad commander was yelling now. 10-4. He acknowledged his order, then drew his vintage Browning GP-35 as he closed in on the invaders. Mercy! Mercy, let me live, mercy! His universal translator filled his helmet with the slugs' pleas for mercy. He sauntered to their cowering forms, their desperate clicking and screeching audible over the translation of their words. He pumped 3 rounds into each. We eat tonight. At the mech, his squad had used their laser rifles to shear off the mech's arms and ablative armor panel. A feeble, raccoon-like creature about 4 feet tall had sprayed out of the viewport with a small kinetic machine gun, but Zahn had responded with a short squirt of pepper spray. When the spray of kinetic fire stopped, he simply reached in and dragged it out by his throat, its soft velvet fur ripped out for his ruined uniform as it raked past the broken viewport. Its screeching and whining unintelligible even to the universal translators. He drew his clearing knife and sliced across its throat before driving his head against a corner of the broken mech once, then twice. It fell limp, as if deflated, with the last sound it heard being Zahn's voice echoing into the dark. We eat tonight. The squad regrouped at the edge of a re-entrant, in the shallow valley the walker had been traversing. The commander quietly addressed the squad. I've called it in. We won't be rationed in for another week. Their reinforcements will be here within 2 hours, probably less, so we need to hustle. Zahn, Vorhat, store the badger and slugs. Forget the croc, it's ruined. The members of the squad fell out as they received their orders. Kaiser, Ulan, water and ammo. Felix, Eric, 1 AA mine and AP mines on that ridge there. The rest of you, all-round security. 10 minutes, then we move. Felix and Eric both clambered up the hill with a sense of urgency, uncomfortably warm in their heat and light-absorbing camouflage armor, despite the temperature being close to 0. They both hadn't eaten in days. Despite the bitter, earthy taste and the slimy gelatinous, yet tough texture, Felix was looking forward to his share of slug. USA taste absolutely vile, he stammered out, then pointed at the GT. But you taste like salmon.